Good morning. My name is Andrew Grimshaw. This is the next in a series of short videos about how to use a GFFS. In this one we're going to be focusing on file copying and in general using files and moving data around. The intended audience is end users, system administrators, obviously, research groups, campuses. We're going to assume that you've properly installed the GFFS client, you have an identity, and that you understand the basics of the GFFS GUI. At the end of this, you're going to know how to copy files around inside the GFFS and also between a local machine and the GFFS. You also know where the data goes when it's copied or is otherwise stored in the GFFS. Before we go on, there's three things that you need to know about how data can be copied in the GFFS. The first is using the GUI, which is how we will do things first, and that can be done using either a drag and drop or via menu. You can also use command line tools, and we'll be introducing the command line tools, and you can also do it using the fuse driver, and we'll show you how to set that up and use a fuse driver. Okay, so we're going to start with drag and drop, and let's go there right now. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start up Grid Client, and you'll see that the Grid Client, I have a link to it on my desktop. If you're using Windows or Mac, you probably do. If you're using Linux, you would just type grid, and here we have it. I make a habit of always asking myself who I am before I go on, and here you can see that I'm Andrew and I'm in the UVA IDP group. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the GUI, which is called the Client UI, and that's going to pop up. By the way, today I'm running on a Lenovo laptop, and I have a 100 megabit connection to a departmental machine at the LMU, which then has a gigabit connection out. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to be using my Virginia identity today, even though I'm using the GFFS.eu. So I'm going to go down into the xcg.virginia.edu. If you had an Exceed identity or a GFFS.eu identity, you'd go down into that. I'll go into Andrew, and here I am. So we're going to scroll over here. I'm going to put this in the background, select my home directory, and what we're going to do is we're going to start by showing how to drag things using the drag and drop interface. The drag and drop interface is good if you're doing primarily single files or a small number of files. One of the challenges with the drag and drop interface with the operating system is that sometimes it can get a little bit confusing to the OS. So we'll take a text file, let's say license.txt, and we'll just drag it onto the desktop. And that's going to drag down, and there it is. Similarly, we can drag data into the GFFS, and we're going to take some data from a local share called lxnm20, and we're going to take this directory here called dtop, and we're going to drag it up and into that directory. So it's going to copy those files in, and there it is, and we see, in fact, there they are. I'm going to go ahead and delete that because I don't want to have it leave hanging around, and I'll say yes to the deletion. So that's going to delete. Meanwhile, over here I'm also going to delete this, pop it up there, and wait for that deletion to complete. Okay, so the other thing we're going to do just for grins is we're going to take this directory called gliderpics here, which we can see has a number of pretty large JPEGs actually, and we're going to drag that onto the desktop, drag it over, and then we're going to let go, and it's going to start copying these files over. This takes a little bit, but there it is. It's done. So now we open up that, and we can see that we've got some glider pictures. That's a former graduate student of mine. Okay, so that's using the drag and drop interface. There's also a menu-based interface. So now let's suppose I want to take gliderpics and I want to copy it to the local file system. So I go down there, that it pops open a browser. I want to go to desktop, and I'm going to call it gliderpics again. Very original set of names I'm coming up with here, and it's transferring the files over, and as they get transferred they'll show up in the Windows Explorer GUI. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Obviously, we can go the other way. I can go here and I can say copy from local file system. Again, I'm going to go to the desktop. I'm going to select DTOP. I need to drag this up so that you can see it. I'm going to open it, and now it's going to copy DTOP into here, and there it is. We've copied it into the GFFS. Once again, I'm going to get rid of this folder. From there, and I'm also going to delete it from my desktop. Okay, so those are that's one way rather that we can get things in and out. We can drag and drop them in. We can use the menu driven to copy things in and out. And this always brings up the question for many people, exactly where does the data go? So I'd like to take a second to answer that question because, clearly if you're copying it onto your desktop, it's obvious that it's going onto your desktop. But if you're copying data into the grid, where exactly is it going? And one of the things to do is to look at this directory right here, my directory, and you'll notice that some of the things are gray and some of the things are not gray. The gray things are exports. So if I copy anything into an export, it's going to go to the directory structure on the machine that I exported that data. For example, Big Deer here is a directory on my desktop at the University of Virginia, and anything that I copy into there, in fact, will go straight onto my desktop, straight at Virginia, and straight into a folder that's linked to. I can see where that is, and we're going to do this several times. I can see that if I want to know exactly where that is, I can go in and I can say, okay, here's where it's going, this IP address, which I happen to know is my desktop. Similarly, if I were to copy stuff into LXNM20 and I go to the display, you see that it's going to copy it into a server running on LXNM20 on that machine. The exact directory it's going to is encoded in here as well, but that's the main thing that we need to understand. So once again, if I copy things in there, it's going to go into the directory. So let's look at exactly how this is going to work. The question still arises: as I copy stuff off of my desktop and into that directory, where is it going to go? Well, the rule of thumb that we use is if you copy a piece of data into a directory, either you create a new directory or you copy a file into there, or you create a new file in that directory, that data is going to go onto the same machine as the parent directory. And so we've shown that in this very simple cartoon here like this. The user has decided to create some data, copy some data, say my data, and put it into a directory in the grid. So wherever that directory is located, let's say this blue box, that's where the data is going to go. It's going to go onto the hard drive on blue box, wherever blue box happens to be. On the other hand, if it's an export, what's going to happen is when you write to the directory, it's going to go into wherever the directory is on that machine that you've exported. Okay, now this obviously begs the question of, well, what if I don't want the data to go there? What am I going to do? Well, there are command line tools you can do when you create a file or a directory to specify a particular storage server where you want it to go, and you can also do this using the GUI. So we're going to show that here as well. So let's get out of here. And the first thing I want to do is point out this machine here, this directory here is called AG Machine Deer. And you'll see that it's on that machine 128.146.6376. So I previously created this directory on that particular machine, and I'll be showing you how to do that in a minute. So now if I open up this directory, you can see that I have a few files in there. What's going to happen is if I take, for example, DTOP, again, which has been my favorite example so far today, and I drag it into that directory, what's going to happen, and then I release, what's going to happen is the DTOP directory is going to be created there, as well as all of the files that are in the DTOP directory, and they're all going to end up being placed on the same machine as the parent directory, AG Machine Deer, which is at address 128.143.6376. So this is going to take just another moment to copy these files in, and then we'll it'll redisplay the directory. And what we're going to do is, let's just pick this one here and look at its location, and we can see it's at 128.143. So wherever you copy it into, that's where it's going to go. So suppose that I want to create a directory that will go in somewhere else. So let's look first off. If I just drop one in my home directory, we're going to see where it goes. It's going to go onto a machine called root.xcg.virginia.edu. Okay, and I could of course use a DNS lookup tool to find out where that is. On the other hand, let's suppose that I want to create a new file, a new directory rather, on, let's say, the cluster at the LRZ. So I'm going to say create directory, and what I'm going to do is, instead of getting it stored where the same place as the parent directory, which in this case would be root.xcg.virginia.edu, I'm going to say that I want to choose a new container. I'm going to call this new directory bebop. Why not? Oops, should be a P. And I'm going to select a container. Now, in general, you could pick a container from a set of resources that are offered by individual places. You can only use a container if you have permission on that container. So I'm going to use, in fact, a container that I'm managing, because anybody can manage as many containers as they want. So I could put this on my AG desktop, which I'd earlier put something on, but that might not be so interesting. Instead, I'm going to go to the LRZ, that's the Leibniz Rechenzentrum in Munich, and I'm going to put this on the cluster there, where since I created this export and I've given myself permission, I can do this, and I'm going to say that's where I want it to go, and I'll wait a second for that to pop into there, and then I say create directory. So what's going to happen now is it's going to go out and interact and create the new directory for me and lay it out there. And now if we go to bebop, what we're going to see is in fact that it's on a machine called lxlogin1.lrz.de. That's the cluster at the LRZ. So now any data that I pour, so to speak, into this directory, let's take dtop again since we're copying that a lot today, and we copy it up and we pop it into there, they're all going to go into that machine and get stored at the supercomputing center on the storage that's associated with that particular container. And there we see that we uploaded the data there. So that's the GUI ways of doing things. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go in here. I'm going to first I'm going to create a new tool. Okay, so now let's say that what we want to do is use a command line tool. The command line tool is useful for scripting. It's useful for people who are just more used to using command tools instead of drag and drop, or where you want to be very precise about what you're going to do. We're going to open the grid shell here, and the grid shell gives us a set of options, and it basically is similar to a shell. We can say help, it'll give us a list of commands. We could say help copy, and it'll give us a short form. We can say rather man copy, it will give us a longer form. And there's a number of commands here. You can do history, and it will display the history of the things that you've done lately. I can go back and forth through my history and do various things. I can do lots of stuff in the shell. I can script. There's a scripting system that runs a language called Xscript, and you can look in the documentations on how to do scripts using the shell script. It also has command line completion, which is very handy, and this is all here. One of the only differences between this and that shell that we saw when we first started the grid is because that's a straight up Java program, we can't actually do command line completion because we don't get the line until the carriage return is typed. So you really, if you want to do that sort of thing, you want to do it this way. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to copy files back and forth. So the first thing to do is ask ourselves where we are, and we're going to go home to my home directory in the xcg.virginia.edu, Andrew, and we're going to do a directory listing and see what I've got in there today. Okay, so this is the same directory that we've been seeing quite a bit from here. Obviously, it should look very familiar. And we can copy files around. So for instance, if we just wanted to copy, just got to get that license.txt, and make a new version of it, something like that, we could just say copy license.txt to lick.txt, and it will copy that. Of course, this is it turns out this file license.txt and where we're creating it are all in the United States, and so we're moving the data back and forth between the two places. But this will finish up in just a second. There we go. So in addition, we can then cat out this file if we want, and we'll see what it looks like. That's just the license. We're going to go ahead and remove that because I don't like to leave a lot of garbage around. We can also copy things to the desktop. So we can copy license.txt to the local file system as described in the man pages earlier. And so we're going to copy that to local C:/ / because we want to put it into root, and we'll say users /AG8T desktop, and we'll call it, in case we already have it on there, we're going to call this new license. How do you spell license? Yeah, .text, and we'll hit the carriage return. And so what that's going to do is copy from the grid onto the desktop, and there we see it pretty much as we would expect. We're going to go ahead and throw that away. We can also copy things the other way around if that's what we want to do. So we can copy from local let's see, what shall we copy from the there? Let's copy House of GABA with a HAUS, House of GABA 2, let's say, and let's copy that into my having typing problems here. So we're going to go into LX and M20, which is a export over at the LMU. And what we're going to do is, we see some things there. We're going to do a recursive copy as well. So we're going to copy -r local colon, where were we? C://. Actually, this would be a good time to use history, because it's just taking us way too long to type all that stuff in. So I'm going to do a recursive copy, and instead of going that, we're going to say DT for D. Oops, typo. DTOP into the same directory name here. Oops, there's already one there. Okay, so let's call it DTOP2, and away we go. And so it's going to copy all those files into the local environment. And now if we do an ls on DTOP2, we see that the files have moved up. We're going to remove -r. I think the V option is supported. DTOP2. Nope. RMD top2/*, and it's the verbose option it didn't like. Doesn't matter. We'll do it this way, and it's going to delete all those. Should be pretty much nothing in there. Nope. And DTOP. Oops. And now it's done. Okay, so that's the basics of using the command line tool. We can copy things back and forth. The target can also be on the in the local file system. It doesn't have to be the source. So for example, I can copy fs proxy doc to local colon c colon users agat desktop, and that's what I want to do. And there we can see it. This is a file that was written some time ago, and that's that. There it is. So we're going to go ahead and close that out. So that's the end of this tutorial. Hopefully you now know how to copy files back and forth using the two of the three different mechanisms. The third mechanism is going to be the fuse driver, and now I'm going to show you how to do that. So previously I'd logged on to a machine at the University of Virginia called Cicero, and we see I'm going to cd to the root directory, so I'm sure I know where I am. And what I've done is I've previously done what's called a grid mount of the grid file system on here. And I'm going to do it again so you can see it. But if I, for instance, take a look at the grid directory right now, we're going to see the same directory structure that we've seen again and again and again. I want XC and Andrew. And when I do an ls, it's going to show us exactly the same structure that we were seeing before, and I can go down in and do all that kind of stuff. But we're going to go out of there, and what we're going to do is we're going to unmount this file system because we want to show you how we bring it up. Okay, so now if we look in the grid directory, there's nothing there. Okay, so we're using Fuse, a Fuse driver, and so we'll be using the tools to do that. So first I'm going to execute the grid command, which is in my path, and I'm going to do a who am I, which is what I usually do. And here you can see I'm in the campus bridging group 2 as well as the UVA IDP group. And what we're going to do is we're going to start up a Fuse driver in the background for us. So we're going to go no hup, which is a Unix way that you do that kind of thing. We're going to say grid. We're going to say fuse dash dash mount local, and then we're going to say the name of the directory, which happens to be the same directory as the command name. You could call it whatever you want. You have to do the usual things. If you're going to do a mount, you have to have created the directory first. So then we do that, and now we have the directory set up. So if we cd down into grid, and we're in the grid now. So if we do an ls, we'll see the ls. Now by restarting the grid Fuse driver, we essentially emptied the cache out. So we're going to be doing some cache loading here as we go down through this. So we're going to go into home, XCG, we're going to tab complete on that. Not that I really need to do that, but because I'm lazy, and go into my home directory. We're going to load up the cache, and now that's in, and so the next ls will be much faster. And it's exactly the same directory structure that we were seeing before. So if I want to copy something, let's suppose from my home directory on this machine in tilde, let's pick a file from tilde to copy over. Let's pick, how about this one? We're going to pick legionio.ps. So we're going to go copy tilde slash legionio. Oops, I always forget that I'm not actually in X Windows right now. Legionio.ps, and we're going to put that in. Let's see, we can put it in the current directory, we can put it in lots of different places. Let's just put it in the current directory for now. And what it's going to do is copy the file into the current directory, which is somewhere out there in the grid. And when it's finished, we're going to do an ls, and we'll see that it's there. Okay, that completed. So if we do an ls now, it's going to reload the cache, and we'll see that the file is there. We could also copy it onto another machine. Let's do the same copy again. Well, I don't like this shell. Let's switch to bash. So we're going to copy tilde slash legion, what was it, legion dash io.ps, and we're going to copy this one into big deer. And so that's going to copy across, and we're going to get a ls of big deer, and we can see that the file indeed got copied across. In case you're having problems seeing it, it's right there. So basically, copying files in and out using the fuse driver, there's nothing to it. It's you start up the fuse driver. I typically leave my fuse driver running for days and days at a time, and you just copy things around the way you normally would. In fact, since we're in this topic area right now, we're going to go into a directory called Pictures and show you an interesting feature of the GFFS. So this directory has a couple of subdirectories, and this is a sort of canonical application we see a lot of. We have a person who wrote a shell script, which is down in bin, and this shell script, basically what it does, let me cat it out. Basically what this shell script does is it takes two parameters, an input directory and an output directory, and then for every file in the input directory, it checks to see whether it's already processed that file by looking in the target directory for a similar file name. If it finds it, then it skips it, and if it doesn't find it, then what it does is it runs some program, which is just essentially this main program.main. So what we're going to do is all this data here is in the grid file system. We have no idea where in the GFFS this data necessarily is. So what we're going to do is we're going to first make sure that the target directory has been emptied out. It has. So all we have to do is we're going to say /script.sh. We're going to go up to the source directory, and we're going to go up to the target directory, and we're going to run this shell script. Now the interesting thing here is the binaries are coming from the grid, the source data is coming from the grid, the target data is being written into the grid. Now they all happen to be getting written into the same storage server, but the fact of the matter is I could have given a path for the source directory from the local file system or from a colleague's export on some other university somewhere else, and I could be writing the data directly to my desktop machine, or I could be writing my data directly to another collaborator's machine in another institution. And so the beauty of this is that I don't have to change my scripts, my applications, anything in order to use data throughout the world, in fact. So that's the basics of running the grid. I have some X windows open as well if we wanted to go down into the grid while we're doing this. We'd see that in fact it's multi-threaded and we can do whatever we want to do. That's the end of this tutorial. I hope you learned something, and we'll see you in the next tutorial.